What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about today with CES in full swing. There's a lot of stuff kind of getting unveiled, things we probably won't see for a while, although there are a few things that are coming up pretty quickly. But then, of course, we have the very expensive high-end items that probably won't really show up in things like Walmart's or anything for, honestly, a couple of years. But there is some pretty cool stuff that's been showing up there. We'll go over that. And then we also found out that Virtual Console is kind of gracing the Switch, at least from a hacker's perspective, I guess, as they are managing to put some emulators and ROMs running on the Switch with the 3.0 firmware that has been hacked. Now, I've noticed that it's been very tense on the internet because everyone's waiting for the Nintendo Direct to get announced. That has been rumored for a little while now, so I do hope it gets announced today because, man, it's almost like things are about to explode in the Nintendo community right now, just because everyone's like just waiting for this Direct with all the rumors flying everywhere. Just be careful with what you believe, because if you believe too much and really look forward to too much, you probably will end up being disappointed as usual. So, keep expectations in check. But today, guys, let's get started. All right, we're going to start today with the emulators and ROMs that are now running on the Nintendo Switch. And this comes from the hacking community that has been working to crack the Switch, to put homebrew on it. We heard recently that there's going to be a whole homebrew channel, homebrew launcher, I guess you'd call it, that's going to be coming to the Switch soon. And it looks like they're kind of playing around with it now, because there were several YouTube videos that went up showing different NES games, Super Nintendo, and even Atari Jaguar, strangely. I don't know why he picked that one. I guess just for fun. Maybe they just wanted to play Wolfenstein, it looked like, on there. But this is being run through PegaSwitch and RetroArch. So it looks like the Virtual Console has kind of made its way to the Switch, just in a different way, I guess. It's a little odd that Nintendo was this slow to get the Virtual Console out, that people ended up kind of putting it on there themselves. However, once something gets hacked like this, it's seriously, to get emulators and ROMs on there, that's like the first thing everyone does after you get homebrew running, is to figure out, oh, can I just put emulators on here and play ROMs on this? Yeah, it's probably even easier now since, well, the Switch runs on a Tegra, something that has been running emulators and ROMs for a couple years now. It's not new to hear, oh, a Tegra processor is running a Super Nintendo game, or it's running a Nintendo game, or even a PlayStation game. It's commonplace at this point. It's something we've seen. We've even seen them running GameCube games already with Dolphins. So it was just a matter of time. And now that the homebrew launch is going to be showing up in different places, with pretty much anyone who has the 3.0 Switch that's hacked, you're going to start seeing pretty much all the systems coming over that can be emulated. Now, again, this is only going to affect a very small percentage of users, because you have to be on 3.0, and I think most of the systems Nintendo is now shipping comes with higher than 3.0 now, so you'd have an older Switch that you then update to 3.0 and then use. So it's not like you can just go get your Switch right now, like one that you've maybe been playing some newer games on, and do this too. So it's not going to affect most people. It's just kind of funny to see that hackers managed to get older Nintendo games on here before Nintendo themselves did. Although I think we're all pretty confident at this point that Nintendo is going to rectify that soonish. Hopefully at this next Direct that keeps getting rumored, some kind of Virtual Console announcement. Although, who knows, maybe they're fine just selling Super Nintendo Classics and Nintendo Classics for a little while now and just call that their Virtual Console. But, I mean, if this paid online is coming up like it's supposed to be, and they're talking about Nintendo and Super Nintendo games being there, well, I assume the Virtual Console is coming at least this year. Next up, let's dive into CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, a little bit here, because, well, we find out all kinds of cool tech here that, like I said, we probably won't be using for a while, because a lot of times it's like proof of concept. Like, they're showing off 8K OLED displays, like 80-something inch screens that we'll probably never see in a, well, I don't want to say never, but not for a long time, in like a Best Buy or Walmart. Years from now, we'll see them probably, at least within a reasonable budget. Like, these things are thousands and thousands and thousands, like $10,000 or something. It's crazy, but it's cool to see, I guess, where the future will be going with some of these displays. Like, I know, like Samsung, LG, Sony, they're all showing off 8K displays, and they look great. It's just not very practical. I don't really know what you would put on an 8K display at this point, unless you have a ridiculously strong computer that can do it. But like PlayStation, Xbox, I mean, broadcast TV is still 1080, so you're not going to see that. But something that you may see sooner than later, because they're going to be releasing it this year, is that very interesting AMD and Intel chip. Remember we talked about that last year when we were closing out 2018? It started to kind of pop up. It was around November. It was popping up that, oh, Intel and AMD are going to work on a chip together. Intel is going to provide the processor side. AMD is going to provide the integrated graphics side, complete with HBM2 memory. And they unveiled those chips, and it looks it looks pretty good. So it's going to come in a couple different iterations, but mostly it's going to focus on the 8th generation quad-core i5 and i7 chips. And these are going to be paired with the AMD, what they call a Radeon RX Vega M GPU. It's going to power laptops from Dell and HP, and they'll also appear in like the smaller Intel branded NUCs. If you've seen those before, you know what I'm talking about. They're like these tiny little computers you can buy and hook up, and they're low powered. Those will actually have a price at $799 and $99.99, so $800 to $1,000. The other ones, no pricing, no build or anything on those yet. According to Intel, these chips will be 7% faster in 3D Mark versus their older i7-7700 HQ, and paired with a GTX 1060 Max Q as a 6GB card, will actually be outperformed by up to 13% in games when it comes to the Vega M GPU. I do want to point out these chips appear to have the Intel iGPU, the HD630. Those will mostly be used to save battery, because like if you're not doing anything, like maybe you're watching like a Netflix movie or something, it's not going to power up it doesn't need the Vega GPU for that. It can get away with using like the HD630, whether you're web browsing or maybe you're typing up a document or something. Mostly that, I assume that Vega chip would be used in things like, let's say if you're playing a game, maybe you're playing, you know, the latest Call of Duty, you're playing Witcher or something, it'll fire up the Vega GPU for that, but like smaller office tasks or just everyday web browsing, it'll probably just use the HD630, saves battery power, doesn't generate as much heat, so if you're using it on your lap, it'll be a lot easier to use. And of course, when you take the laptop off the wall, that I assume that Vega chip is going to have a harder time running. So this is a fun pairing. I was really excited to see this happen because if you've been growing up with computer parts, components, or anything, you know Intel and AMD have been battling out forever, so it was so weird to see these two announce they're coming together. I do want to make a point. It seemed that Intel and AMD wanted to let everyone know this is Intel's project, and they appear to be contracting AMD out for the GPU. So this doesn't seem to be any long-term partnership going forward for everything they're going to do. For example, I saw people talking about how the PS5 and the Xbox 2, maybe they'll have an Intel processor. I don't think AMD wants to give up that market, though. I think they love having that piece of the pie to themselves, the console market. And honestly, for what these consoles use CPUs for, based on what the Xbox One X is getting away with right now, with what is essentially a low-powered laptop processor with that Jaguar processor, they don't need a lot, and a Ryzen chipset would be a massive step up from what they're using now. So there's really no need to drop something like an Intel, like an i7 in there. It's just not, it doesn't need it. It would ramp up the cost. Remember, they're going to try to keep these newer systems that come out in a few years or something. They're probably going to try to keep them down to the $400 to $500 price range. At this point, I think $500 might even be pushing it. $400 is like the magical price point. If you start including like Intel and AMD and they both want their cuts, you're going to start seeing more expensive turnarounds there. It won't be cheap if you have all these companies kind of put in there. AMD wants that all to themselves. So I wouldn't expect it to come from anything else. I just like the idea of having these little ultrabooks that can put out visuals for games that would really rival some of the bigger laptops now. It's going to be exciting to see the benchmarks, and those should start coming out later on this year as they start shipping to market. It's going to be a lot of fun. Next up, the ESRB rated a couple of games. They rated Final Fantasy 15, the Royal Edition, which was odd to see, although it makes a lot of sense based on what they're trying to do with Final Fantasy 15, which is make back a lot of their money with how much that cost. And State of Decay 2 was also rated. Generally, ratings happen towards the end, like when the game's pretty much finished, because there's nothing really else to add for them to rate. A lot of times, maybe bug fixes, things like that have to take place. But for the most part, the content that's going to be in there is figured out and it's pretty much ready to go. So State of Decay 2, something that a lot of people were concerned to be pushed back into the year, appears to be on track for its spring release. Now, we also know that Sea of Thieves is coming out in March. That probably leaves an April or a May release for State of Decay 2. And then that kind of leaves me wondering where something like Crackdown is going to show up. I'm trying to figure out if Crackdown 3 is going to get pushed all the way to holiday 2018. Because remember, it was supposed to come out holiday 2017. Is it really getting pushed back an entire year? Because that kind of tells us how they were really nowhere near ready to release that thing in 2017. And it's kind of a shame. I was hoping that would be a game that comes out earlier in 2018. Sea of Thieves looks fun. I don't know if it's strong enough to hold up the Xbox brand in early 2018 when we assume Sony's going to show up with things like God of War, for example. Although State of Decay 2 might at least help some. Not a household name, though. Looks fun if you're into like the zombie type games, but it's not something that you're going to go, oh, cool, State of Decay 2 versus God of War, you know, in the sales charts. Nothing like that. So right now I'm curious where Crackdown 3 is going to fall. Would that even be a summer release? Maybe take advantage of some of the light offerings throughout summer? or is it just going to be something they battle out, you know, maybe Nintendo's big release in November or something with? I don't know. It doesn't look very good for Crackdown. It was taking this long to get even any information. It kind of disappeared. As for Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, that appears to be some sort of Game of the Year edition, I guess. It's probably going to include most of the first season of DLC. Apparently there's a second season of DLC coming out. I have a hard time saying that with a straight face. Second season. Season 2 of DLC for Final Fantasy 15. We assume that's going to include all the DLC up to this point in one package, something we haven't really had at this point. But what's odd is the game exceeds 100 gigabytes now, so I guess they just give you the regular game and then download codes anyway. It's so weird, man. It's so weird right now with that kind of stuff where you buy the game, but then you have this bit, you gotta download the rest of it, I guess half of it. At least you can play the game in its vanilla form. I would like them to do things like put some of the security update patches, things like that, little framework things they did rather than the extra stuff, at least on the disc, so you don't have to install all the other boring patches that take forever. I want them to start doing that with these Game of the Years rather than just take the same disc, put it in a fancy cover art, you know, box, and then put a little download code in there. At least put your patches on the disc. Next up, let's talk about Monster Hunter World. It is coming up pretty quick now. A few weeks from now, everyone can pick up Monster Hunter World and play it, and it looks like it's going to be a good time. I played the beta, and it was pretty fun. I didn't really get into Monster Hunter in really like the 3DS, the PSP, Wii, or I didn't really play it then. I played some, believe it or not, during the PS2 era when that came out, but I didn't really get into Monster Hunter, although I played it here on the PS4, and it was pretty fun. It's coming out in a couple weeks, and we now know what the file size will be on that download. I was a little surprised with how small the beta was when that came out, and it looks like the overall file size for the regular Monster Hunter World, the whole thing, is actually only going to be about 16 gigabytes. Now, I know I say only, and that still sounds like a lot, but really based on the game, like we just talked about Final Fantasy 15 being over 100 gigabytes. So you see something like Monster Hunter World at 16 gigabytes, and I think that's a little easier to swallow. Now, of course, there might be patches on day one, maybe more DLC will add up to it, and maybe it will eventually get to like 40 or 50 gigabytes. It's just nice to know day one, even if you're preloading it, it probably won't take too long to download compared to something that's 50 gigabytes. You know, when you get the disc for a game now, you pop it in and it's got to download like 10 to 15 gigs anyway. So this Monster Hunter World is almost the same size as a patch that we normally download from a retail version. So looks good. I like that. This was mostly leaked from a really what I saw online, a still of the Japanese cover art, the backing with the big 16 gigabytes printed on it. So glad to hear that at least the file size on that's manageable. And our last bit of news during CES before Sony's event, really their event usually entails like TVs, cameras, pretty much everything but a big focus on games, which is weird because that's their biggest, I mean I guess the CES, but that's like their biggest market is their console market. That's really what's holding them up heavily right now because their cell phones were doing terribly, their laptops, their TVs were doing okay, and their cameras were all right, but still like it's definitely Sony, the PlayStation, and their insurance company are their two most profitable sections, where they don't give a bigger highlight at something like CES. Either way, they did reveal sales numbers for us for the PlayStation, and surprise, it's doing well. To date, by December 31st, when they cut off the sales numbers that we're getting for January, 73.6 million PS4 systems have sold worldwide. And to give us a little context on how much they've gained recently, just in the holiday season alone, they didn't really define this. I assume that's like November and December to them because it does include their Black Friday sales. 5.9 million PS4s. Now, of course, Black Friday, they were very cheap. It's pretty easy to rack up several units just in that one day when it was basically 150 bucks. But man, the PS4 is now closing in on the PS3 lifetime sales, which is about 83 to 84 million. And it's going to cross that this year, definitely. It's about 10 million off now. And I expect them to have that locked up and done probably, I would say probably by September at the latest at this point, because the PS4 is just a beast when it comes to sales numbers. I do think at this point, with how well it continues to sell, which is crazy, because I feel like everybody has a PS4 at this point, it's going to cross 100 million. Probably in the next 2 years, I'd say. Maybe even sooner than that if something big happens. Maybe Spider-Man helps it take off, you know? It's crazy how well this system is doing. It's almost like GTA 5. Like, I look around, I'm like, everybody owns GTA 5, but there it is at the top 3 for the UK sales charts. GTA 5 and PS4s, they must be selling like together in tandem. That's like the only way to explain that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Newswave today. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments below talking about anything we went over today, whether it's maybe emulators and ROMs running on the Switch. Maybe you're not in the hacking scene, that's fine, because to be honest, I'd be shocked if even 1% of Switch owners could run this now, because the firmware that it runs on is pretty old, and I think we're going to be getting another big firmware patch coming up here soon, and Nintendo is clearly all over the security of the system, since they're even paying hackers to tell them about all the exploits. I mean, they patched out that 3.0 thing like that, like so fast. But let me know what you think about emulators, ROMs. Let me know what you think about hackers technically beating Nintendo to putting Virtual Console on the Switch. I think it's kind of funny, but I do think Nintendo's library will be pretty good for the Virtual Console, and of course, it'll be legal, right? You won't be modifying or changing code of your system. So I guess that'll at least be a little more user-friendly and something you can use, when you're beyond firmware 3.0. Also, let me know what you think about maybe the sales of the PS4. Are you impressed that it continues to sell as well as it does? I mean, 5.9 million PS4s over the past couple months is absolutely insane. And then, of course, let me know what you think about the partnership between Intel and AMD. Are you surprised that this kind of came together so quickly and easily, almost it feels like? And are you excited to hear about these Ultrabooks, very thin laptops, having the abilities of something like a larger gaming laptop, so it'd be a lot easier to kind of carry it around. Maybe they drop it in something like a 13-inch form factor. Maybe even MacBooks start adopting them. It's going to be fun going forward to see what they can do with these chips. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.